Happy New Year, everybody, and Tony here with my review of Verdi's Rigoletto with conductor Michele Spotti, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the 6th time I saw Jan Boss's production of Verdi's Rigoletto at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because I wanted to see, hear, and witness Brenda Rae perform the role of Gilda. I've been following Brenda Rae's career for quite some time, more specifically over a decade, and what I've recognized about Mrs. Rae is that she specializes in a great deal of roles, mainly for a lyric coloratura soprano. Sure, she also sings a good chunk of lyric soprano roles, such as Pamina from Die Zauberflöte, but she's also had a go at some slightly dramatic coloratura soprano roles, such as Maria Stuarda from Donizetti's Maria Stuarda and Violetta Valeri from La Traviata. The roles that she specializes in mainly consist of Gilda from Rigoletto, Lucia Ashton from Lucia de Lammermoor, Olympia from Le Comte of Man, and even Zdenka from Arabella, and lest I forget about Zerbinetta from Ariadne auf Naxos. I've been quite curious to see how her voice was going to fare live because I thought that her voice, well, based on some recordings on YouTube, had a nice, pleasant sound to it. And that same pleasantness held up quite well live. Brenda Rae's silvery lyric coloratura soprano voice was silky, chiffon-like, and satin-like in emission. It's a pleasing, sensitive, very sensitive sounding voice that is quite gentle to the ear. It's not a voice that I would consider to be utterly hair-raising, but it is a sensitive and really fine-sounding voice that is pleasant to the ear and has a nice silvery edge that made Brenda Rae quite renowned as a lyric coloratura soprano. She's essentially somewhat a combination of Anna Moffo, Ruth Margaret Pütz, Roberta Peters, Dolores Wilson, Colette Bocchi, Arlene Auger, and Valerie Masterson rolled up into one fine package. Her voice was able to do some justice for Gilda, as she also used that sensitivity to paint sweetly calming hues and tones, especially when she was singing Caro Nome. And her high notes were quite lovely to listen to, even though they're not the most electrifying. While I can applaud Brenda Rae for her sensitive way of singing, as well as her overall refinement whenever she opened her mouth to sing and let out such silken, chiffon-like, and satin-like tones, there are some caveats that I've had with her voice. First of all, there is some colorlessness going on in her voice, which is attributed to her core being rather inconsistent, as well as her coordinated chest tones being just as inconsistent and just as wavering rather than being stable. This is especially egregious in the first half of the opera. However, in the second half of the opera, her coordinated chest tones were slightly there and her head voice usage was a lot clearer than in the first half of the opera. However, the inconsistencies were quite a bother to me because I would have loved to have a lot more charisma, color, and a lot more dimension to Brenda Rae's voice. It says a whole lot when light lyric coloratura sopranos or coloratura soubrette or soprani leggeri or even lyric coloratura sopranos of the past had way more coordinated chest tones and fully developed chest tones. Those include Maria Barrientos, Mercedes Capsir, Elvira de Hidalgo, Graciela Pareto, Amelita Galli-Curci, Luisa Tetrazzini, Gwen Catley, Lily Pons, Erna Berger, Lina Pagliughi, Margherita Caroscio, Hilde Guden, Anneliese Rothenberger, Renee Doria, Dolores Wilson, Beverly Sills, Roberta Peters, Ruth Margaret Pütz, Anna Moffo, Silvia Gesti, Colette Bocchi, Jeanette Scavati, Ileana Kutrubash, Valerie Masterson, Lucia Pop, Judith Blagan, Patricia Wise, and Luciana Serra. And I dare not forget about Vilma Lipp, Erika Kurt, Gisela Vivarelli, and Mimi Kurze. And this is especially the case when it comes to my personal 7 favorite Gildas, who are Beverly Sills, Roberta Peters, Jeanette Scavotti, Mimi Kurze, Erika Kurt, Vilma Lipp, and Gisela Vivarelli. And if we're also talking the more girlish voices, Toti Dal Monte and Reri Grist had a lot more coordinated chest tones. Those colorature sopranos that I've mentioned, including Toti Dal Monte, Lily Pons, Reri Grist, Jeanette Scavotti, and Valerie Masterson, had way more coordinated chest tones and not just those piercing high notes that they were very well known for. And I highly encourage Brenda Rae to keep on enriching her core, develop her core, strengthen her core, and take advantage of those chest tones so that her voice can consistently grow, flourish, and blossom with more charisma, more color, and way more dimension. She should also take notes from a lot of the great colorature sopranos of the past, including Reri Grist, Anna Moffo, Jeanette Scavotti, Colette Bocchi, Lucia Pop, Ileana Cotrobash, and Luciana Serra, for how great coordinated chest tones should sound like and how actual squillo should sound like, and not just those blazing top notes. The material that Brenda Rae possesses is all there, and it's great material that she's working with. It's just that I want her to grow a lot more in core. I want her to be able to take advantage of those chest tones and really be engaged with them, not only 100%, but even 110%, let alone 1,000%, so that her voice can really show a lot more personality, richness, and color, and not just have those really silvery high notes in store. When all is said and done, Brenda Rae did a serviceable job as Gilda, especially helped with her sensitive tone, silken, chiffon-like, and satin-like emission, and a whole lot of lovely girlishness that she's still able to emit even after nearly a decade and a half of singing Gilda. But she should never, ever take those chest tones for granted and really engage with them should her voice remain in great tip-top shape. Even with those caveats addressed, I still have to give Brenda Rae some credit for what she was able to accomplish with Gilda, complete with girlishness and a nice silken tone to her voice. And I pray that she will be constantly encouraged and motivated to keep on developing her core, taking great advantage of her core, as well as ensuring that her chest tones are well accompanied by her high notes, thus ensuring that the overall package is complete. Alexandra Omens was a lovely silvery Contessa Ceprano, complete with her trademark light lyric soprano voice that was so pleasant to the ear, and I could definitely sense an upcoming Gilda one day. And Maria Vasilevskaya was able to take great advantage of her flexible silvery lyric soprano voice to characterize the lady in waiting so beautifully. But if I had it my way, I would have gladly wanted Maria Vasilevskaya to perform the Countess Ceprano and Alexandra Omens to perform the Lady in Waiting, just because Maria Vasilevskaya's lyric soprano voice suits the Countess a lot better than what Alexandra Omen's lighter voice could accomplish. And I also dare not forget that Alexandra Omen's more silvery light soprano voice is way more suitable for the Lady in Waiting, but I totally digress. These two ladies still continue to do such a fabulous job with these two small roles. Stephanie Wake Edwards was thoroughly gorgeous as both Maddalena and Giovanna. As Maddalena, she was sultry, plush-toned, and absolutely seductive. And she also used those fine qualities to give Giovanna her mature big sister characterization. When listening to Stephanie Wake Edwards a lot more closely, her voice does remind me of an amalgamation of Giulietta Simeonato and Monica Sinclair. And this is especially where Monica Sinclair's chest tones and rather unique voice is concerned, because those qualities that Simeonato and Sinclair had were pretty much in great evidence in Stephanie Wake Edwards as both Maddalena and Giovanna. Her plush chest tones that continued to grow in richness, depth, and a whole lot of dimension, and not to mention the dark and very velvety color that I love about her voice, were in absolutely great evidence, and it is such a miracle to hear Stephanie Wake Edwards grow in consistency, beauty, ladylike plushness, and a whole lot of awesome musicianship. There is a brilliant future for this mezzo-contralto in roles such as Waltraute from Götterdämmerung, Brangäne from Tristan und Isolde, Ortrud from Lohengrin, and maybe even Anina from Rosenkavalier, and a great deal of roles suitable for her mezzo-soprano/contralto voice. Heck, I could even see her one day as Fricka from both Das Rheingold and Die Walküre, and maybe in a few years' time, Kundry from Parsifal and Magdalena from Die Meistersinger von Nürnberg. Stephanie Wake Edwards has a lot of great material to work with, and she owes it all to her fantastic technique that she was able to use to her awesome advantage, as well as her great personal growth. You know how I mentioned in my previous video of Lucia de Lammermoor that Andrei Danilov was born to sing Edgardo, let alone embody Edgardo? Well, that was the same sentiment that I felt about his characterization of Il Duca di Mantova, or the Duke of Mantua. There is no doubt that Signore Danilov has been performing this role for what feels like nearly 5 to 10 years from now, and he continues to find a whole lot of charisma, virility, strength, and a whole lot of awesome moments in this licentious anti-hero. My goodness, was Andrei Danilov in a great role tonight, as he's always been, because his steely commitment, his unwavering resolve to consistently grow as a singing actor, and his iron will constitute everything that was amazing about Andrei Danilov as a singer, a singing actor, and an overall performer. His vocal portrayal of the Duke evokes a lot of hints from Jussi Björling, Gianni Poggi, and Giuseppe Di Stefano. Wonderful lyric tenors with exceptional techniques and a whole lot of manly charisma. Sure, he may not be one of those high-flying tenors that I've always preferred as the Duke, such as the ones found in Alfredo Kraus, Charles Boulle, and my personal favorite of all time, Luciano Pavarotti, although let's face it, Alfredo Kraus might as well go hand in hand with Luciano Pavarotti as my personal favorite interpreter of the Duke of Mantua, because of their amazing high Ds that they used to cap off Possente Amor Mi Chiama, unless I forget about other favorite interpreters of the Duke who also had superb high Ds found in Franco Bonisoli, Barry Morell, Salvatore Fisichella, and Celso Albello, just to name a few. But I totally digress. Andrei Danilov was still a miraculously grand and totally virile performer that I could never, ever take my eyes and ears away from, because of his great commitment to his craft, as well as his overall mesmerizing stage presence that made me want to root for him with all of my heart, mind, and soul, because of his excellent technical prowess. So bravo to Andrei Danilov for embodying one of his signature roles, the Duke of Mantua, with virility and a whole lot of manly charisma. Kieran Carell was a characterful Matteo Borsa, all thanks to using his light lyric tenor voice to his advantage, and even embodying him with a whole lot of charming charisma to boot. Tobias Kera was, as always, a frighteningly awesome sparafucile, taking great advantage of the lower part of his voice to make him thoroughly intimidating. He is certainly no stranger to this role, as he has been singing this for what I believe to be over a decade or two from now, and he was a thoroughly consistent performer, and dare I say, one of the best basso profondos / basso cantantes of today. His tall and handsome stage presence perfectly complement his overall wonderful vocal prowess, thus making Tobias Kera's interpretation of Sparafucile a thoroughly engaging one to witness and get your eyes and ears glued on, as well as be on the edge of your seat every time he appears on stage. Gion Kim was a sufficiently noble Count Monterone. He has a strong stage presence. He was thoroughly engaging with the score as well as with the music, and lest I forget about the drama. He was a charismatic and fine gentleman on stage who also took great advantage of the Count's overall anguish and snarling, thus making him a thoroughly realized character. And vocally speaking, he was just as fine, solid, and strong. He took great advantage of his cavalier baritone voice to also give it a little bit more richness and roundness to make this particular character part come to life, which he did so laudably. However, I'm kind of missing a lot more depth and richness that I would expect in many bassos or bass baritones singing Monterone, such as the ones found in my personal favorite Monterone of all time, Samuel Raimi, who was just as well known for singing Sparafucile, Bonaldo Giotti, who is pretty much the same case as Samuel Raimi, Fernando Corena, because of how he was able to prove himself to be one of the most complete packages in the role, despite being more renowned for comic roles such as Leporello and Dr. Bartolo, and my personal favorite basses singing Il Conte Monterone, renowned for their dark, cavernous voices, could never be equaled in the forms of Plinio Clavassi and Antonio Zerbini. But in the case of Gion Kim, I thoroughly digress because his fine stage presence and his good vocalism did make a fine impact on his characterization of Il Conte Monterone. It's just that I do prefer a darker, richer, and more cavernous voice as Monterone that could still hit those bass baritone high notes. However, when all is said and done, Gion Kim does deserve a lot of credit for what he was able to accomplish, and he did the role of Monterone well with his fine stage presence and great musicianship. Etienne Dupuis was absolutely wonderful as Rigoletto. I first saw him over 10 years ago perform the role of Giorgio Germont from La Traviata, and I already knew from that moment that this was a gentleman who was going to sing a lot more dramatic roles in the future. Sure, he has his initial foundation as a more lyric baritone, let alone a cavalier baritone or baritone noble, given that he specializes in roles such as Enrico from Lucia de la Mermur and Zurga from Le Pêcheur de Perles. And I was also justifiably skeptical of how he was going to fare as Rigoletto, given his foundation as a cavalier baritone. However, I was thoroughly surprised because he did exhibit vocal growth. He also exhibited a lot more fullness and richness in his voice, and he was able to thoroughly sell it as Rigoletto, even with some of the quirks that he's had that are more akin to Verismo rather than bel canto. There is no doubt that Etienne Dupuis also stole the show as Rigoletto, all thanks to his amazing vocal talents as well as his great flair for drama. And yes, there are other grander baritone voices that I do prefer as Rigoletto, such as the ones found in Lawrence Tibbett, Leonard Warren, Robert Merrill, Aldo Protti, Apollo Granforte, Tito Gobbi, Nicolai Erlea, Matteo Manugera, Piero Capuccilli, and my all-time favorite Rigoletto, Cheryl Milnes, all thanks to that incisive sharpness in his voice that made him thoroughly convincing as this jilted jester who is so full of anguish because of this curse on him, to the point where Cheryl Milnes was Rigoletto. My goodness, you could even buy Cheryl Milnes as Rigoletto because of everything that he was defined by. But I digress in Etienne Dupuy's case, because Monsieur Dupuy was still a thoroughly committed singing actor who continued to exude a whole lot of strength, confidence, and a whole lot of aplomb as Rigoletto, and I therefore salute his phenomenal efforts to bring the role of this court jester to life. Jared Wehrlein was a handsome Count Ceprano, all thanks to his round, rich, and voluminous bass baritone voice, and he also made a strong impression in this role. Kyle Miller was an athletic, handsome, cavalier-like, and thoroughly amazing Marullo, all thanks to his cavalier baritone voice, which just radiated with virility and radiated with roundness, as well as made me thoroughly root for him, and he just seemed to have a ball with his character part, which in turn made me smile with such a huge sense of glee. And Stephen Marsh was tall and handsome as the court usher, all thanks to his handsome and focused baritone voice. So overall, the singing showed a whole lot of commitment and a whole lot of great collaborative efforts from everybody, especially where the main players were concerned. I could still give credit to Brenda Rae's thorough commitment as Gilda, especially when it comes to her skills as a singing actress and the sensitivity that she exuded in this particular role that calls for virginal sweetness and a great deal of self-sacrifice, especially at the end of the opera. Sure, she could use a lot more work in ensuring that her chest tones grow in richness, fullness, and a lot more charisma, color, and dimension, but the positives of Brenda Rae's total commitment as a singing actress, as well as the sensitivity and class that she was able to emit as Gilda, could never ever be taken for granted. I also have to give major kudos to all of her co-stars, such as Gaeon Kim, who did a fine job as Monterone, Stephanie Wake Edwards, who was excellent in the dual roles of Maddalena and Giovanna, Etienne Dupuy, who made a strong impression as Rigoletto, Tobias Kera's consistently awesome Sparafucile, and of course, Andrei Danilov's consistently grand Duke of Mantua. Everybody managed to pull in their weight and did so with such aplomb and self-confidence that I was thoroughly engaged from beginning to end. Even the smaller roles performed by Jared Wehrlein, Kyle Miller, Stephen Marsh, Kieran Carell, Maria Vasilevskaya, and Alexandra Omens were absolutely amazing. Therefore, the entire cast of tonight's performance of Rigoletto exuded great confidence, as well as a whole lot of great collaborative efforts from the main singers all the way up to the supporting players. The conducting done by Michele Spotti was thoroughly engaging. He was nuanced throughout the score, and he also teased in some really interesting moments, especially with Gilda's second solo aria, Tutte le feste al Tempio, and he also ensured that the chorus, the orchestra, and the singers were all together in great harmony and syncopation, and he just led that orchestra with a great amount of fire and a great amount of nuance. And what more can you expect from the chorus and the orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin? Everybody was a pro, and everybody demonstrated great collaborative efforts from beginning to end. So overall, with Brenda Rae being such a fine performer as Gilda, even though she could use a lot more work, with being thoroughly committed to her chest tones and use a lot of those chest tones and all of those chest tones to ensure that she strengthens herself in color, charisma, and dimension, she is still an absolutely fine performer as Gilda. She was able to sell this role with great sensitivity, a whole lot of heart, and a great deal of lovely girlishness that she had me totally transfixed. I will still encourage her to develop her core a lot more and keep on using those chest tones because those are the sources of the real vocal drama. Those chest tones, and coordinated chest tones at that, are the real sources of true vocal growth. And if she can take great inspiration from the likes of Mary Costa, Anna Moffo, Jeanette Scavotti, Mimi Kurtz, and even Luciana Serra, then I'm pretty sure that she can grow into the best coloratura soprano she can be. And I therefore salute her for whatever engagements that she has coming up. And I do hope that she continues to grow and develop in the best way possible. And for those of you who caught Verdi's Rigoletto at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you feel that Brenda Rae was able to sell it really well as Gilda? Sensitivity, girlishness, and all? Did you also feel that she was at her finest in terms of her efforts as a singing actress? Did you also feel that she could use a lot more development and growth, especially where her chest tones were concerned? Or did you feel like her performance was pretty lackluster and you feel like someone else stole the show from her feet? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of Verdi's Rigoletto starring Brenda Rae as Gilda. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Verdi's Macbeth, also the Deutsche Oper Berlin starring Byung-gil Kim as Banco. So until then, Happy New Year, everybody!